It's the June show with Barb from Healthy, Well, and Wise. And this month we're talking about trigger unhappy. Is this what I'm reading, Barb? What's going on? Are you okay? Do you
That
want to talk about it?
uh, I'm great. Yeah, it's over the last 35 or so years in my practice, it has become more and more apparent, I would say, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, that there's just so much more going on under the surface for everybody. And when people are trying all sorts of very good and very valuable, you know, different strategies in their life, there's there's a certain level of benefit that's gained, but then there seems to be a point where people are simply getting stuck. And sometimes they get to a certain point, but then they go back quite a number of steps. And so I've been doing a lot of extra studying lately. I've signed up for a really wonderful course, a short course with Dr. Gabor Mate. And he is, he's in his 80s, but this man is really incredible. And he talks about and teaches about the underlying triggers in our lives. So the things that, we've kind of packed in boxes and stored down within ourselves, but then we get into a situation or around a person, and then suddenly something's triggered. And it's as if we're a child again in that situation, that the moment is immediate, it feels like you're in it, but that people are quite often very, very stuck in these moments. And so when we look at, you can have the best diet in the world, you can be working on your sleep routine, you can be getting exercise, all of the good things. You might be taking great supplements, but at some point, something just isn't breaking through to the level that it needs to be.
So, like, when an example of that would be, I guess, like you said, you can do everything right, but there's trigger points. You could be feeling like you're in an old scenario. Is that sort of what you're referring to? Like maybe it was a bit of trauma or something? Like, I'm trying to just nail that down. Can you help me?
Right, right. So, I mean, as far as trauma goes, everybody experiences trauma. There's good trauma, there's bad trauma, but it's when we have trauma in our lives that has created wounds, and those
Okay.
wounds have simply scabbed over. And oftentimes, those things have happened at a young age where we didn't have the skills or the language to work through those things, to even ask for help if we grew up in an environment where it was safe to do so. So there's lots of different facets, but this doctor is also very much about mental health and addiction and the underlying pain with all of these things. So when we start to dig a little bit deeper, and the practice that he uses is something called compassionate inquiry. And I know we've talked about this before, is my ability to talk to somebody else and the compassion I can find for anybody else is far greater than the way I often talk to myself. And so
Okay.
it's asking why. Why are we treating ourselves this? Is this a true core belief that we aren't worthy of treating ourselves or talking to ourselves well? And so it's peeling back a few more layers and getting more root cause about why people keep falling into these habits. The different forms of addictions, because we're not talking just drugs and alcohol. We're talking about relationships, perhaps, that a person keeps going into. We're talking about maybe food addictions and what the underlying reasoning is for a person to continually be sabotaging themselves like that. So it's a whole new light that I'm understanding and holding space for, and shining, but it requires a lot of self work for myself.
It's, and I, back to what you first said too, I think there's this approach, and it's in this article that you wrote that'll be in the June Hub, that we look at things and break them into compartments. Our physical well being, oh, take this pill. but we're not seeing the connection between maybe that the mental, the physical, and just the emotional health of those three components. We don't really tie them all together very often, do we?
We don't, unfortunately. And, in all of the advances of modern medicine, we've had our pieces very much separated,
Right.
and it's with the intent to get to the bottom of something, but not seeing the correlation. And we can't separate it. Nothing is separated there. We've talked about the gut brain connection before, and the vagus nerve and things like that. And none of it is at any point a separate entity. So we have to look at the whole. And this is a new something I'm very excited about to start to explore within my practice. But one of the things as students in this program is you get to unpack a lot of, explore a lot of your own wounds. And so it's a bit of a lengthy process, but just understanding and recognizing the triggers in our own lives and the way that it helps every relationship we have with every person once we start to explore and understand our own responses to something.
Yeah, and the triggers, like you said earlier, they can be both negative and positive. I had a great
100%.
experience about a week ago. There was a memory was triggered, and it was just like, oh, that was so cool. That was so fun to go back there and visit that. But at the same time, there is other triggers that are negative that can cause that. And
Mhm.
you're right, because it does affect so many other things. If that triggers negative, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to eat a bowl of ice cream to feel better. I need to, like, it
Mhm.
just carries on, right? And you don't understand, you're
It
not actually
does.
solving the root of the problem. You're just burying it a little deeper, or finding a way to compensate for it, correct?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Because when certain things especially are triggered, and post-traumatic stress disorder is a
Yeah.
key, descriptor for that, is that memory of whatever that incident in is, it creates a cascade of chemicals and hormones within your body as if it's happening right this minute, just because that thought's being brought back. So, in the form of trauma, if it's a relationship with a parent, with a spouse, with a child, and then suddenly everybody's right back into that place of trauma and negativity, and nobody can relate to each other properly in that space. And it's creating inflammation in the body. For
Yeah.
some people, there's so much unhealed trauma within them that autoimmune diseases or cancers may be something that can come out of that just because the body cannot move forward. And there is a lot of science now that actually is able to prove that this is the case. It's not a new concept, it's over 2,500 years old. But now there's more of an understanding of that energetic imprint upon ourselves. And I think it's really, it makes me really happy to know that people can still work through this in a way that's constructive and productive and enables them to go into a healing response within their own bodies, because that's where it needs to take place.
The other element we might have left out on this that's probably critical that would have that effect too is nightmares and dreams and sleep,
Yeah.
because a lot of people will go back to certain scenarios in their dreams, right?
Right.
And I never just sort of add. I know that we're pretty big on this, but I mean, it's just I think that's part of it too. That rest part becomes critical. The sleep, the diet, the exercise. Like if you can
Mhm.
do all those components, you're helping it along, but you still got to deal with it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to deal with it. And, you can take that another step where you look at the night owl, you look
Yeah.
at the insomniac, you
Yep.
look at the person who gets off to sleep, but then suddenly wakes up and then they can't get back to sleep because that brain gets busy all of a sudden. And it's like, once we start to explore, well, what's that all about? When did that start? And it can be uncomfortable initially when
Yeah.
we start to come to terms with those things, but when it's given a voice, when the emotions related to those incidents are given a voice, and the person can go through those stuck emotions and truly start a different level of healing. Can't change what's happened,
No.
right? It's happened. But if you're so stuck that you cannot move forward and embrace everything in your life that's beautiful, it is definitely something that should be looked into.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, so I'm excited about having that as another facet of my practice.
So what will it be called? Like, what's this course called that you're taking then? What is it exactly?
It's called compassionate inquiry.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
And it's yeah, I totally encourage people to, Dr. Gabor Mate is available on YouTube. A lot of, free things that people can do to sort of start that process by themselves, or at least investigate whether it feels right for them.
Yeah.
And because that's what it boils down to, is things need to resonate with an individual for it to be something that we can start to work on.
Do we, and this is my last question, I don't want to hold you up, but I mean, I'm curious now because I think with trauma, I think too, there's a certain point in my life where I was just like, just let it go. It's done. It's over with. Do people have
Mhm.
like, can people, I mean, you got to be a certain mindset to get to that point, right? Because you have to be
Mhm.
able to be strong enough to believe in yourself and understand what you're doing. But is that the point of it sometimes? Like, is it just letting that go? Is it understanding it? Or there's two different parts there. Understanding it and letting it go are two different things.
Yep.
It's when they merge that
100%.
you were able to let it go.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long way for a really, I'm just trying to look at it from that perspective because I think a lot of people get stuck on such not in the trauma aspect. Don't take me this wrong way, but in the little things in life, they get so
Mhm.
stuck, and it's like I know I'll say to people, just let it go. It's not important. Be be this person, not what that other
Mhm.
person's saying,
Mhm.
right? Like
So
I think
it's
that's part of probably what you're going to discover with some of this
right,
stuff, right?
right. There has to be that understanding of what the situation is before the person can truly understanding why it
Oh,
has a
okay.
hold on us is what frees us.
Right.
And until we understand that, um, and that can be complicated, very,
Mm,
very complicated for a lot of people. Safety, for instance, some people go through life and they
right.
simply don't feel safe. So we need to understand where that's come from before
Address
they
it.
can understand that that sense of safety needs to start to come within themselves. But if it's related to something they thought that they've buried, forgotten, forgiven, but if it hasn't actually been dealt with, then that's going to life has a way of presenting that over and over again. And
Yeah, that's a good point.
just to give an example, at one point when I was around 40, I ended up having a stalker, and so issues from childhood. And I know
Yeah.
I'm far from being alone in people that have had childhood issues in that regard. Everything that I thought that I had dealt with, I'd simply put it in a big box in the basement and put other things on top of it. And it was just like, holy cow, talk about opening Pandora's box.
Right.
And so
Was a
that was an eye
trigger.
opener. It's
Big.
right there.
Right. And
So
it's on the cusp, isn't it? Wow.
it is.
I think we need to do a part two on this at some point because there's so many other areas I want to go into on this, but we're dwindling on time today and I have to let you go to
Okay.
work. And
Yep.
unfortunately they like me to work too, apparently. So
I
what are we
know. I
going to do?
know.
Enjoy the nice weather. Can't wait till next month. Maybe I don't know if you want to. Let's talk about this. Well, maybe we'll have the little bit of segment on this, just a recap next month because I think it's important that I want to see where you are in this course as well to see what you think of it.
Awesome.
All right,
Awesome,
cool.
Dave.
Take care.
Okay, thank you too.